Cool. And we are live making comics now. I am DJ Kaufman,
My name is Jim Rugg.
and with us today we have
James Patrick.
James Patrick, the writer, script writer, writer of Shell's Kitchen, issue 18, which sold out last week. I can't believe it. That's the first 10,000 run book that we've done that sold out in the first, not in the holder sale, but like right after the holder sale. When it went to public sale, it sold out. Written by my old friend. We'll get to that too, because I've known James Patrick. I've known James and Jim for over 30 years now, which is crazy because it makes me feel really old. But here we are, 30 years later, writing, drawing, and comics about shellfish and all different.
And DJ, correct me if I'm wrong. I think James is our first guest who is a writer, exclusively a writer. So I'm pretty excited to dig into that. I feel like, we talk process so much on this show. And I think people who watch this show, a lot of them are interested in making whatever, comics, books, TV shows, whatever they're interested in. But that making is such a big part. And I think having a writer here is really going to be exciting for me personally. I'm eager to pick your brain, James.
Cool.
But I think for our audience, I think it'll be a little bit of a different view of comics and how they're made. And his story will be a unique one to us so far.
Yeah, so James, kick it off. Introduce yourself and...
Well, like I said, I'm James Patrick. I've been writing comics since the late 90s. I started with DJ, basically. And I've worked for... I don't know if technically View Askew, but got my start on my first paying job was movie poop shoot with DJ, with Kevin Smith's site, and then I wrote some Star Trek. I had a book called Death Comes to Dillinger, and wrote some Star Trek, wrote some Angel, and then DC noticed my work at some point, and Dan did specifically. And, I wrote some Batman, some Harley Quinn, some Green Arrow. I also run a company called 21 Pulp, and we're currently have several titles with Macmillan Publishing. I've had a few successful movie stuff. Death Comes to Dillinger a long time ago, but recently Kaiju Score and Astronaut Down has gone to Netflix now. I currently... about a month and a half ago, my first manga came out. It's called The World Enders. It's about some lunatics who go to blow up the world because they hate it and it's terrible. And then about a month ago, the Omega book came out to quite really excellent reviews. And it's currently running. It's from Mad Cave. It's from me and Polly Junquera and Pat Brasau. Honestly, pronouncing names sometimes is the worst part of this job. And I know I'm forgetting a lot of stuff. And like I said, I think I'm writing, I'm doing stuff for 21 Pulp. And then at the end of this year, I have Encanto coming out with paper cuts and Moana coming out with paper cuts. And I have a book called The Monsters of Jimmy Crumb coming out, a book called Kai Jr. coming out. And I'm consulting at Netflix for Astronaut Down as well. I think that's a pretty quick overview. So
It's so wild, like when you mentioned starting with me, which is weird because we met however many years ago now, 30 years ago at, I think, Mid-Ohio Con.
Yeah.
So Mid-Ohio Con in Columbus. And I think I had a small table there.
I think that was the con that Kurt Busiek and Mark Waid announced some kind of big joint venture. That was the thing that Mark Waid had thrown all his money into. That was, and I think Harlan Ellison was that. But I remember. But I do overlap the cons that I've been to. I tried to remember the con that I got Street Angel from Jim Rugg, and I couldn't remember if it was the first time he had it in Ohio Con or the first time he had it at Pittsburgh. It all kind of runs together. But yeah, like you were saying, I just remember. I think that con was that. I don't know if you remember that or not, but.
It's really hard for me to remember the big news of those shows, but those guys were always, Mid-Ohio Con was always such a good show. And I remember whenever I mark my, when people go, how long have you been doing this professionally? I was like, I believe James Patrick was the first person to pay me a page rate or we were working on the Staring at the Sun book, which is
Yeah.
very rare. I guess I don't even have one. You said you got a couple copies. I want to get one of those.
I probably have 1,000 in my attic, so I'll pick you up.
Good news, Jim. We should launch a Whatnot show. So that was like, and me as an artist, I had already had some mentors when I was like a teenager. They were like 30-year-old writers and stuff like that. So they were kind of in my head as I was drawing. And then like you had such good feedback. And I know you were always like, I hope I'm not bothering you with the changes to the art and stuff. So I kept redrawing a lot of panels and stuff, but that stuck with me throughout the years where you're still in there as sort of like a Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of ghost in my, so those writers are kind of in there as my like invisible counsel. Cause when I'm looking at something I'm drawing now, I'm like, I can kind of hear your voice, or I can kind of hear, another guy named Andrew Zoller. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if you guys have like people like that in your mind that you.
So you say that, and that's kind, but I was a bad collaborator back then. I mean, I was not. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing, and I've gotten better in terms of how to work with somebody. And I don't mean that I was like a jerk or anything. I just mean that I would change things too much and stuff like that. And we all learn. And I see writers now making those same mistakes when I consult, and they're like, oh, they tell the artist every single thing, and the camera's 2 inches away from their face and stuff like that. But I see some of those mistakes now, and I cringe at how I used to make them. And I try to give back by telling them, you don't need to you don't need to kill the artist with this stuff. Let them do their job, and you do yours. And yeah.
That brings up a really good, perfect segue here into Shell's Kitchen. So here you guys are collaborating again 30 years later. I wonder how that process is different than the first time you worked together. James, were you editing DJ's art this round?
No.
DJ,
no.
Obviously you're better now.
Well, so the first way it's different is I think I wrote this in a weekend. And I was happy with it, and I let it go, and once it was to a point where I thought, hey, this is great. And then I just let DJ do his thing. And there was a time that I didn't do that. Now, the only time, and I didn't give DJ anything on this. I don't think I gave DJ any feedback except, hey, this looks great. Hey, I like these colors. Hey, I like this. The only time I do it now is if an artist isn't communicating something that's important. And I'm like, you're kind of missing the mark on this important piece of communication here. You're not communicating that this. Otherwise, usually, or I'll say push in on something because, we need to see the emotion here a little more. It's usually some feedback like that. And, where I used to be so hands-on with the script, now it's like maybe 2-3 notes a script, and just in that category. But specifically for this, I just let DJ do his thing. I mean, DJ's been doing this a long time. And he's great. And it would be for me. It would be offensive for me to be too hands on at this point.
Yeah, and to go in reverse for everyone that's listening, we our first comic summit with Gary. This was one of the ones that popped up, and Gary just riffed out probably 7 or 8 plots. Like this could happen in an episode. This could as if it were a TV show. And I think this was the one that we zeroed in on as like influencer because we hear this, Gary hears this all the time. So like I was able to just get on a quick call with James and go, here's the plot line, then give you the room too. Say like, you can, you can name the characters or whatever. And I think it might've been your idea to flip it. Cause I think originally it was a guy.
Yes.
You said, I think it should be flipped to a girl influence. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. Like
most of the stuff in there is Gary's and yours or whoever was in that summit, meaning all these pieces you guys gave me. It was just a pot full of pieces. And it was just like, I just had so much to work with. And that's basically what it is, except for, the pacing, of course. But what I really liked was the time jumps. Because whenever you do something like that, it really can structure something like easily. And then you have, in essence, like 3 short stories instead of not technically, but it structures it nicely. But the time jump and then all the little things, and then I added some stuff. But I did change it to a girl just I felt it just made it a little different. Came at it from a little different angle. Gave it a little more charm, and
It's had an interesting effect, that choice, James. As we're starting to get feedback on this particular comic, we're finding a lot of women responding positively to it. And I don't know if that happens if you didn't make that change in terms of the main character.
yeah, well, hopefully, but all of it, like I said, it was all pieces from everybody, mostly from you guys, and I just felt like that was one thing. It's funny, the collaborative process is wonderful, right? Like as I was talking to DJ about this, DJ said to me, he's like, and then I don't know, maybe at the end she eats him, and I was like, yeah, hey, that's really cool. And I don't think if I had come up with that idea, I think I'd have thrown it out. And what I mean by that is by hearing someone else say it, by me being the audience and that connecting like that, like I thought, oh, that's a really cool idea. Hearing it like this, it's like it's like seeing it on TV or seeing when DJ says it. I'm like, and you're like, hey, that works. And had I come up with the idea, I'd been like, that's stupid.
Yeah,
that's too much.
and,
But hearing him say it completely flipped it into, oh wow, I like that. And then I couldn't get it to work at first, and then at some point it all kind of pulled together. But that's what's wonderful about the collaborative process. Like that bit would have never probably been in there had I come up with it.
Yeah, and like I think like I was kind of floating it because I wasn't sure because like sometimes Gary will say things at the offsites where he'll just want to kill every VeeFriend. Like he'll be like, "Oh, we just murder him. We straight up murder him." We're like, "Oh, they get eaten," and we're like laughing, and we're like, "Were you serious?" So like, I remember telling you like, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna draw this out. We might just have to change this panel." Like, but it's okay because if Gary doesn't like it, like I think I showed it to him in this in this stage, and he just was like, "Yes," and it was very raw and.
Well, I think it works because it ends, and then you just flip the page, and it's like
1 year later,
when you're it works because it ends so strong, like it really punctuates the scene, and having them scream, I was like, oh yeah, I got to make him because they say they're like joyful about it. They're like, yeah, oh, just eat us, it's cool, and then the next page they're screaming. And I'd always seen it working as like a circle of life thing where they come back and, in the VeeFriends. But anyway.
Yeah. And also like that, the twist of this is because like, I realized like even us in the room when this was coming up and like, if everybody could see the full tape of that, I think I might have even said out loud, like, because I thought sometimes it feels like Gary's joking around, like where he's like, okay, it's a shellfish tower. And we're like, really? Like, we're like, like, because I've never seen anything like this before.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, wait, this sounds like a Twilight Zone episode.
Well, when you said it to me, I was like, am I going to pull this off? Like, this is weird. This is really weird. And my first draft, I didn't turn it into you, but my first draft was really weird. And, but I think what made it work was the thing that I did the most drafts on was the first page or two that has that kind of Twilight Zone sort of, there's this place. And the customers and that kind of Rod Serling intro. It's like if this place isn't like other places, and then it kind of that kind of opened the door to it, and I was able to I said, okay, that kind of makes it work for me. I hoped it would work for everyone else, but coming in like that and then punctuating again on that was like one of the final things was I left it out, couldn't get to work, and then I had then we had her eat them at the end, and I was like, yeah, this works.
And the even to dial it back even further, like my first reach out to you, because I think with this one specifically, John, Gary was like, listen, I want you to find a real writer. No offense to you, DJ. He's like, you can't write them all. And I was like, no, it's good. He's like, but I really want to find a real writer on this one because it's dealing with some like deeper therapy stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like I might have written it completely, like my style of doing it is different. I knew I could draw it, and he said, let's go with, we're always saying behind the scenes, we could hire any freelancer, but he always says more family than freelance.
Yeah.
So whenever we approach Jim Rugg or you, like I've known you guys for over 30 years, and I know that you're going to be capable of doing it. And I also wasn't like, if it was anybody I've never known, if I would have reached out to them and said, hey, so I've got this comic about a shellfish tower. They might be like, are these people insane? But like, I think my first message to you, Jim, was like, James, was the like, this is the weirdest comic that we've put out yet. And I thought, we've written some you've written some not weird stuff, but like
We
you know
used,
the
our
crackers and
our first publishing was two birds in a cage screaming at each other for
yeah
12 to 16 pages in crackers.
yeah
And, so like we have a history of doing weird things
yeah
like this. So,
yeah, and like it's kind of like I like it because we were having this discussion. There was a lot of hate on this on a social post about this specific one, but it's like got thousands of shares and whatever because it just sounds wacky.
yeah.
But I would say that like that's the challenge of like these stories for VeeFriends is it's a different genre. It's a different challenge of how do we make this even deeper, which is the goal that Gary set out in the first place with me. He's like, how can we make this deeper than just a
Yeah.
surface level sort of
Well,
thing?
honestly, if I'm in the room with you guys on that day, I'm like, I want to write the damn kaiju book.
I know.
I want to write the skateboarding ninjas. But no, and it's fun. Okay, so I'll tell a quick. So going back, my first DC assignment was Harley Quinn, and it was Joker's Asylum issues. So there are 5 issues, and each issue gets a separate villain. And I was told I was getting the assignment to do a Joker's Asylum, and I was all excited. And then they came to me and they said, "You got Harley Quinn." This was before Harley Quinn was big. And I mean, she was always big, and I was like, I don't want Harley Quinn. I want Scarecrow. I want this. I want that. And I took it, and the issue was received very well. But it just goes to show you, so I'm a working writer, and that's what that's what I'm supposed to do, and that's what I did. But you find great things come out of that, and I feel so. And the same thing with this. If I'd have been in that room, I'd have said, no, I want the kaiju book, damn it. but
I think that's a really good lesson for anybody who's trying to be creative. If you read these books on whatever writing, art, there are prompts, and most of the time we read those books and go, well, I'm not actually going to do that exercise, but it is a source of creativity is whenever you're given something that is not your first thought.
Yeah.
That's kind of the definition of creativity. Let me figure this thing out that I hadn't thought about a week ago.
And you do something like that and it can change your career. I mean, some jobs, you hear like directors or something, they take a job or a writer takes a job and then the rest of their career is doing that work because they fall in love with it on something like that. You just never know. So, yeah.
I always think of that, taking whatever opportunity you have and sort of maximizing that. And there are a lot of examples, Jack Kirby famously would say, what's the lowest selling book you have? I'll take that one over because it's going to be canceled. It's not like someone's going to be fired so that I can have this job and then turning it into something. I always think of Harvey Kurtzman used to do the one pagers at Marvel, and it was like his first comics work. And I can't think of the name of them now. I have a collection of it, but nobody wanted them. Like he was kind of like working in the mailroom and just wanted to make comics. And this was the page that no one wanted. He does them. They're brilliant. And guess what? They're still being collected at this point, 75 years later, whereas like the books they were in, nobody remembers those books, but they remember this guy who was hungry and he took the one opportunity that he had and he made something great out of it.
Yeah. And like even Steranko, he got Strange Tales, which was like his first, they gave him Strange Tales because, and look what he did with that. Or The Lion King was supposed to be was their like B and C team at Disney doing that, and it wasn't supposed to be a big deal. And they had other people on one of the other movies. They had all their A game people, and so I mean that's creativity, and that's creatives, and that's part of the joy of it is what you discover.
James, that experience of like, oh, let's eat the fish at the end of the scene. Do you take something away from that as is it something as a writer you continue to grow? Is that something that you take from this experience of like, what, the weirder ideas, like I shouldn't be the one who discounts them. Like let somebody else tell me that's too much as opposed to you being the one that says no.
You're hitting it on. I do take something from it in that sometimes, so I should have learned this lesson, but I'm always learning it is, every idea might work in a different situation, or if you just get it right, like, there may be no bad ideas. That's not entirely true, but it's only about the execution, where it fits in. If you can get it to work within what you're doing. And my first attempts at this, I couldn't get it to work, and then I did get it. So it makes you go back and think you have to be open to that. You really have to be open to pushing yourself And the wonderful thing about writing today, and this isn't true for like probably drawing, although maybe it is it's just a file. So you can write it any way you want, and then you can delete the file or do another file, and you should always experiment. And so, it's just a file, it's just a draft. And then you do it and you're like, oh, okay, that worked. So
I taught for a while at SVA, and it was a multidisciplinary program. So people would come in that were their background was writing, and they were now, trying to do their own visuals on top of it, or, they were making TV commercials, but wanted to do more personal work. It was this wide variety of people. And some of the writers were spectacular. And I can remember one of the writers describing that first draft. They would call it, and apologize to any listeners out there, they would call it their fuck it draft.
yeah.
And the idea was, don't worry about editing. Like you said, James, don't worry about even showing it to anybody.
Right.
But don't stop yourself in the middle of it. Like, get
Right.
it down, and then you've got a tool. Then you can use that. You can look at what you have. It's out of your head, and now you can put some new stuff in your head and really work on this thing.
And it's a great lesson. And I still fight it, and other people still fight it, and they still will try to. And I'll do it too. I'll write halfway through the book, and then I'm like, and then I'll go back, and then I'll go back, and then I'll go back, and I should know by now that's a waste of time. It is a waste of time. Write through it and then rewrite it, and then do all the crazy stuff you want to do. Get all the good ideas, get all the bad ideas, find all the treasures. Throw away all the trash later. So yeah,
That's
definitely.
a great lesson. Like, anybody who's listening to this and wants to make stuff, finish the draft, like James says, because you're going to have to rewrite it anyway.
Yeah.
But finish the draft. It's so important. And who knows, that every part of it may end up changing as you go through rewrites and edits. But that having the value of a completed draft, like I said, it's a tool that you can then use in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and another piece of that, and what many writers and artists will tell you, is if you try to make the perfect piece of art for 10 years, it is not as valuable as where you will be in 2 years if you make 4 or 5. If you just finish things and keep going. Like, people want to make their masterpiece, or they spend a lot of time on their masterpiece. But the truth is that going through that process over and over is going to get you to your masterpiece in 5 years, maybe on something else, rather than your masterpiece in 10 years. It's just something that keeps coming up, and it's something that I tell young writers and artists, is that finish your work and then go back and do what you want to do. Because if you're tinkering for something forever, you're losing lessons by doing that. You're losing experience and skills and stuff like that.
I would be remiss to say that we did mess up. Like, your name's on I told you this already, James Patrick, but some people were like, DJ did the art and story. I'm like, because on the inside cover it says story and art by DJ. I think it was because initially I was going to do both, and then, like I said, we said, well, let's get a writer for this one, and I think we just,
it's cool. No worries.
We did put you in the back with a nice little, plug-in, man. Like, not that you need it, but
I hate that picture, but yeah.
Oh, well, that's your picture online. You got to get
that's the only picture that like exists of me out there. So I'm not saying I hate that you used it. I hate that I provide that picture. It's the only picture I have. I really need to do another one. It was like taken 4 or 5 years ago, and it's just like, I just don't like it.
Yeah, I understand. They blew up my photo like really gigantic for the National and put it up really high that said like meet DJ, and I'm like looking up my face and going like, oh my God, like, but
it's been one of the most traumatic parts of being a maker in this world of social media, is that suddenly we were always in a room by ourselves and nobody saw us, and now we're on video and in photos, and we're not the models of the industry. We're sort of the behind the scenes people.
There, Amanda said it's a nice pick, so stop killing yourself. Another feedback that I got from this, because I did take this. I had a few bagged copies for San Diego Comic-Con. I walked around with them in my bag, and I was seeding them out to some like reporters and different people that do hosts of different shows and things like that for comics, and cracked a couple open and told them the pitch about what it was, and it was surprising to me. I wasn't expecting the female readership to be excited, like, oh, this sounds like a comic I want to read. Like, the feedback afterwards now has been great. And it's also a lot of our comics have cliffhanger endings where it's like, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, yeah,
And, we've left people hanging with some of those. This one, I'm told, actually feels like this could be an ending. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, you
this
can,
could be it,
yeah,
So,
you can use your imagination to finish it while it's still, which way is that going to go?
right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I assume that's what you guys want too, is like a different voice in there coming in and just making this one a little different than the other ones, a little different than yours, DJ, and yours, Jim. Um, just to make it feel a little different, just give it a little variety, give it a little different flavor.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm a big fan of that short story format too.
Yeah.
And as a comic book reader, we really gone away from that in a lot of ways. Everything, a lot of stuff is written for the trade. Probably starting around 2000, the late 90s, publishers really started doing that, where it's a 4-part story, a 6-part story. And I fell in love with comics when I would get a comic, and it was like, this is a complete short story, very satisfying. And I love that. To DJ's point, I love how well you nail that as like, this is a very satisfying, complete story.
That was my favorite part of doing this. I love one and dones. I love complete stories in the 22-page issue. And when DJ had said this, he had said, "Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yes, yeah." I told him I love writing short stories. And when he said, he said, what do you want to do? I was like, you give me as many of these as you want, and I will, because I just love the short story. I love the craft of it. I love constructing it. I love, and this is pure nostalgia, but I love the 22-page book in my hand. And I love the idea that you're going to read it beginning to end and there's a story in there. My first comics were, quote unquote, some people don't like this term. I don't, floppies. But I love the 22-page, 24-page, 20-page, whatever. I love the format and I love the single story in it. And that I've had people I've had so many pitches rejected because, even if it's a 5-issue series, it's like, oh, this takes place, they're all short stories that with a through line, but they all connect, and they're like, oh, nobody wants that anymore. Nobody wants like 5 short stories as a whatever. But I love that. So
I was just showing here I think you dropped these reference photos for me.
yeah.
For like what the inside of the restaurant could look like, because we were like, is this like an upscale restaurant? Like what kind of restaurant has a seafood tower? Like,
Yeah.
you mentioned the titty twister from the
Yeah, I liked it because it was so busy. And
yeah
if you added that to a fast food wharf, I thought that and the same thing with that though.
yeah
I always liked how busy the titty twister look was. So I threw that in there and said, yeah, it's kind of has a lot of character like this.
So then I was trying to like my bet. I wouldn't say the deadlines were super tight on this one. It was tight. It was a pretty tight. So I was just like, there wasn't much time to,
Yeah.
I showed Gary this sketch based on your reference. So like, in a way, it's a good point of like the writer giving the general, like, it looks something like this, and then letting the artist cook on it.
Yeah.
And then we've got Gary in the mix too, saying like, okay, this is it. Because if he would have said, no, let's do more upscale or fancy, because the only seafood restaurants I've been to in Boston were kind of not like this. They were like definitely more upscale or something. But
yeah, and when I first searched for seafood restaurants, that's what I saw, and they were boring to me. So it was like that's.
I love looking at the original drawings too. It's fun. Or even like that's so wild to like. Again, I'm talking to you. I know you, but like sometimes we're talking to artists that are fresh and don't have any clue what VeeFriends is, and I'm showing them this, and they're like, "What is this?" Like, and to say like it doesn't have to look like this. It can be, your own style, and kind of like develop it, artist interpretation. How could this look like in a animation or a movie? We always have animation on the mind for our animators, and
what you guys are doing is great, and I'm glad you asked me to be a part of it.
Yeah, and we definitely have Jim working on something else too already. I'm excited about. I can't talk about it, but
I'd have had draft, I'd have had probably a script to you if it wasn't for Evil Trees.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we were supposed to have Jim on last week, but a tree hit his house, and I'm not sure if you saw that.
I didn't see that.
You did? Did you see that?
No, I didn't see it until now.
It was like the very last minute because you're like, I'm sorry, I got to cancel because the tree hit my house. So I was like, I updated. It was like, new plan. We're just going to do the preview, but we can't really sell this book because it's sold out. But I will say, like, if you're looking for this book, there's plenty of. If you go to Whatnot and hit the VeeFriends tab, there's plenty of our streaming folks that bought and sold this out. So that's a good way to get it. You could probably get a cover A or cover B relatively cheaply. 20
I think it's on I saw it on eBay.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
they're on eBay now. So
yeah, great.
Some of them are pricey. Yeah, I mean, some of them are.
Yeah, it's not. VeeFriends is a little bit different because I get that all the time with people saying, like, why are your comics so much more expensive? And I'm like, we're just kind of doing something different.
Yeah.
And there's a collectible, this is the first appearance of Loyal Lobster, which sounds crazy when you say that out loud, but
right.
it's technically, it's the first.
But they are available for free for people who want to read them, and that's what's that's great.
Well, so. Jim, when you're writing the Netflix show for Gary, this will be, this will be a collector's item, So that's just me being. That's not breaking news to anybody. That's just, I could definitely see that being a reality in the future because this just feels like an Adult Swim cartoon or something like that.
If we're talking comics, James, you've worked with a lot of different publishers now, including VeeFriends, and you've been doing this for 30 years. What do you see in comics these days? Like, how have things changed, and are you seeing any trends? Anything that to you stands out, pops out?
Yeah.
How's it different than 30 years ago?
Yeah, I see mainstream books, and I adapted it organically. I'm going to set that up because, as I said, my first manga came out about a month ago. I see storytelling techniques shifting towards manga craft a little bit, even subtly. I saw it happening, and then and I'm not going to say that's the reason Absolute Batman is a big hit, but if you read Absolute Batman, you can see the inspiration in there. That's one of the big things I see is even subtly or not so subtly is that move into that. I think comics are wonderful right now. I don't want to. So the one thing I would never say, which a lot of people say, comics suck now. Comics were better 30 years ago, and I don't believe that at all. If you want something, it's out there. There's something out there for you. There's a lot of books out there, and there's wonderful books out there by Image and by VeeFriends or Marvel, DC. So there, I always think there's been wonderful books to find, even in the 90s when everything was terrible. There was Preacher, there was Sandman, there was this, there was that. You could go out and find stuff, and I think that is the one thing that hasn't changed is that comics have always been great for whatever devices are in the current storytelling techniques. So I think there's always great comics out there. What I do see in the industry is a shift to some manga influence and some manga techniques heavily, and that's I'm sure I could think of more with more time, but I think that will be my answer for now.
Yeah, it's hard to it's hard to discount how influential manga has become.
Yeah.
I was in Ireland a couple years ago, and I'm sure you guys do this whenever you travel. Whenever I travel, I'm looking for comic book shops, right? Like what's around.
Yeah.
And I found a few pretty nice shops in Ireland. But one of the things that I found in one shop, it was all manga. It was literally a manga shop in Ireland. It's like, where are we? I mean, that's got to be about halfway around the world from Japan. And you can see the influence on that scale where it's literally, that's the only comics they were selling. And it was a full shop.
Yeah.
So it's pretty, I think that's really an astute observation. I think as graphic novels started to rise in the 2000s, if you'd see them in Barnes and Nobles or used to be Borders, manga was like 2/3 or more of those sections. And I think in fact, the closest Barnes and Nobles to me now has a graphic novel section, which, is great, better than it's probably ever been. But then 4 times that size is a manga section. Like they're
Yeah.
not even putting them together as graphic. You know, they're next to each other, but they're not listed as the same thing.
Right.
And you know, for anybody, I know that we have a lot of people that are new to comics that watch this show. Manga refers to Japanese comics, and a lot of that stuff is being translated and finding massive audiences all around the world, not just here in America, but massive audiences. And yeah, of course, that's going to have an influence because it's readership. It's obviously, you know, people talk about Marvel and DC as being the top publishers, and it's like they're not. It's Viz and Scholastic, but Viz is all manga. You know, that's an American publisher that is just pretty much exclusively manga and outselling everybody.
Yeah, and you know, I get a little annoyed when people say comics are shrinking. I'm like, no, just there's specific comics that are shrinking. Comics, which you know is the umbrella for manga, for Scholastic, for you know YA comics and stuff like that. It's growing. It's out there and it's big, and you can't just point to direct market superhero titles or even outside of that. You can't just point to those things and kind of lump the industry in with your and say although these comics are shrinking and but having said that, comics are doing well again. I mean, I keep saying it, but like Absolute Batman has been it has a market share of its own at this point, and it's carrying DC's market share because of that is pretty big, and they're selling 300,000 Absolute Batman. So okay, so I did think of something, and I don't, I would say that like a ton of variant covers I don't love, like 100 variant covers on things. That's a trend that makes me nervous. Seeing that many covers inflating sales on event comics makes me nervous because maybe you do see a little of the 90s in that, whereas what happens is then you can't always get an exact count of who's reading the books. And then, so that's a trend I'd like to pull back. I like variant covers. I like blind bags. I love all that stuff. But if you're doing 100 variant covers and that's why your sales are, at some point when people get bored with those covers, the only true method of keeping readers coming back is good comics. It's good writing and good storytelling. It's the only proven method, and every other method has punished us. At some point.
Yeah, I get nervous about that too. I mean, we're doing variant covers, and that's what the collectible market is so wild. But I do feel like those ones where Batman's a good example, like with the 20 or 30 different artists on a cover, and like you're picking your favorite artist, I guess, maybe, but
I so get it though. And maybe those 100 covers gets me a Deathstroke book I wouldn't have gotten had if Batman didn't have 100 covers. I get it. I really do. And I'm not knocking it. I'm just like, I think you just have to temper these things and look at the history of comics and say, if you're going to do that, just make sure your stories are good, please. And make sure you're getting readers and not just collectors. So.
Yeah. Sasari said, I'm 29. I have a 3-month-old daughter at home. I'm not invested in VeeFriends, which seems to be the common thing with everyone here. I don't know if that's the common thing because I see a lot of recognizable names, but so I'm outside of this bubble. Why would I introduce this to my daughter? I was like, I don't think you would introduce this to your 3-month-old daughter. Also, a 3-month-old daughter,
bored.
I'd be like, look at this, baby. Like, I don't think that's the thing that you do, my friend. But we do have so Gary will say that VeeFriends is 3 to 93. And that means that we do have a YouTube kids show that's very all ages, and you could put your kid in front of that. I don't necessarily, as a parent that raised kids, I don't think you should just throw your kids in front of screens, but people do that these days. But I'll just say, like, it's a very mesmerizing show on YouTube Kids. But these comic books are not for 3-year-olds, and even sometimes we'll put, ages 14 and up, or suggested for mature readers. There's definitely some, adult. This is for you. This is for you, Paul. Or what was his name? Cecil. So sorry. Yeah. This is actually for you. Yeah.
Best thing they can do is just buy it, read them themselves, and then determine for their child.
Sure.
Obviously the best.
Yeah.
Thing.
We're not putting a disclaimer on comics. Like, I mean, come on, like it is, it's we have a character named Common Sense Cal, so common sense. I'm
Yeah,
opening this.
because if your kids watch The Little Mermaid and see lobsters singing and dancing and having fun, and then reads VeeFriends 18 and sees them being eaten and dying,
Yeah,
it can be traumatic. So I would say read it first.
I definitely feel like the brand was launched as very much like all ages Sesame Street type of thing, but as Gary wanted to develop this and move, let's see what we got. By the way, there's not going to be this paper in here anymore. Issue 19 does not have this. That was to help protect from there's the cover B by Nick Selleck, who you can go back and watch the interview with Nick Selleck as well too before we had our break. Great guy.
I think I've watched all your interviews.
Oh, cool.
Well, it started with my friend Chris. When Chris was on, I watched it, and then I just kept watching Chris Faison.
Yeah.
I've known Chris forever.
Yeah. Oh man, we've talked about Chris a million times.
We all worked on Hero
Happy Hour.
Yeah, we all worked on Hero Happy Hour together.
I told that story once, either on this podcast or at a Comic-Con, where I said the Hero Happy Hour comic book was about superheroes in a bar after they've saved the world that day. It used to be called Superhero Happy Hour, and DC and Marvel both co-owned the word superhero, and they sent them a cease and desist, and they had to. I think that's changed now. I think someone in Europe fought it. So I told them, I was like, you guys should bring back Superhero Happy Hour, because it was a very good concept.
That book, that book was very popular.
And I would say one of the things I was thinking of this morning was, in talking to you, James, was I said at the beginning, I've known you guys for 30 years, right? So we've had, there's been definitely pauses where we don't talk for a long period of time, but I would always say, you never know who you're meeting now,
right?
Who in the future is going to be someone you collaborate with, or, you always have to keep an open mind to that stuff. Maybe you guys are not out there. Maybe you're not even doing anything like this yet. But if you build that network of people that you trust and, have, start to build up more friends and family than just acquaintances that could, fill a spot for you. I think, in life, that could be anything, right? That could be I know a guy that can fix my sidewalk, or, but in comics, it's such a small world, and there's so much opportunity for storytelling and collaboration. And
and those, you go to cons and you make the bonds with those people, and when you really make those bonds with those people and stuff, and those people will be most of the time, those people will be your friends forever, and you never know when you're gonna do whatever. I said before that some of the cons overlap to me. But I'll tell you one con that never overlaps, that I remember every moment of, and it was the Andy Milonakis weekend. So that weekend is one of those weekends, you and I will always remember, and stuff like that. So it's just it's crazy the bonds that you make, and then the experiences that you have with those people. And as creatives, it's important to do that, because otherwise we're home in an office, in a room, with four walls around us 24 hours a day. It gets lonely. You got to take walks, and then you got to socialize, and you have to do those things. And those cons are important. And, if I have any regret, it's that I didn't do more. It's like, Jim, I knew you a long time ago. We overlapped and we ran into each other, and then I stopped doing cons, and but yeah.
I was going to ask, James, are you still, you work for, again, variety of publishers and variety of situations, from creator-owned original material to work for hire, working on IP and stuff. Are you still in a position where you're constantly looking for artists and hiring artists for some of these? How do you find artists these days?
So the easiest way is basically I follow, Instagram and X. I just look around. I'm working with Nick Izzo, formerly Nicola Izzo, and he's done he just did my World Enders book. He's doing a new manga with me, and he's wonderful. And I have 6 projects with him or something. And then I'll have a project here with one person and here with another. I do use artists over and over, but I'll also, if they're not available, or if a project isn't right for the people that I usually work with, yeah, I go out and I find them. I usually, nowadays it's more like Instagram, but my favorite way finding people is like going into the shop and seeing what it looks like on the page. So going to a comic shop, picking up an Image comic, picking up a Mad Cave comic, and just reading it and saying, "Oh wow, this guy looks fantastic on the page," um, and you know, we just did this Omega book, and Paulie's art was wonderful as it was coming in, and then I got it and it looked amazing on the page. Like, it looks so much better on the page, and I don't know if it's because I'm conditioned to the screen that I don't see it anymore as much. Like, I've lost that sort of, because that's how I do most of my work. And I'm looking at a page 100 times as I'm writing dialogue over something. So I try to look in the comic shops and see what artists look like on the page, and then yeah, and then I go find them, and then I ask them. And a lot of and I have we work together differently. We have collaboration deals. Sometimes I'll outright just pay somebody for something, but it all depends on the publisher too, on who I can get, and what I can pay, or what they can pay, what the publisher is offering. So I get turned down a lot, and a lot of people are always asking me to work with them, and some people get upset. And I've had people get mad because we were supposed to do a project or something, and then that project dies, and then we never do another project. But the truth is that I only have so many projects, and sometimes the projects just aren't right for that artist.
Yeah, right. You mentioned about kind of being in this room alone and why it's valuable to get out and socialize, to get out and take walks. I like hearing that. I'm an advocate for that. The healthier you are, the better your work is going to be, and the more work you're going to be able to produce. But I wonder, like, how you stay excited about comics if you've had kind of those ups and downs, because if 30 years, like, you've kind of figured out how to do this, but can you talk about some of the kind of best practices and ups and downs of that?
So I get excited for comics in the realm of reading comics. I never lose my excitement for comics, I don't think. Maybe there was a period there in the 90s where I was like, what are we doing here? And I kind of took a step out, and I kind of regret that. And I came back, and it was DJ who introduced me to Bendis's work. And then, like, there was that period of like Bendis and Brubaker where everybody came back into comics, and they said, comics doesn't have to be like this. So, and I found since then that I don't have a problem finding great comics and a reason to be inspired to read comics. As for working in comics, woo, you have your ups and downs. I mean, I have been treated very good in this business by people, and I have been treated very poorly in this business by people. I have had people, so I don't go out there and scream, oh, they took my idea or whatever. But I had a company basically Photoshop an idea of mine that was very unique, and like just blatantly photo, to the point that when the book was announced, I got 100 messages, people saying, did you see this? Did you see what they're doing? And I took offense to that. And that hits you in the gut. And that's one of the things. I mean, to say I've been screwed financially in comics, that everyone has been screwed financially in comics. And I have movie deals, and some of those movie deals are with a publisher that went bankrupt. And so there's downs there in terms of, sometimes I don't get paid. I'm not shit talking anyone. I'm just saying that is the business. And that is, in that situation, that was an unfortunate thing, that some very successful things that I did are in a category of bankruptcy. And I think in the beginning, I would sometimes take a year off, and I learned not to do that. So when I would get punched in the gut, I would let it get to me. And now it gets to me for a day or two, and then I got to stick my. I'm a working writer. I got to blow it off, and I got to go out there and I got to do the work, because that's how I make my living. So you got to grow up on that stuff, and you got to take your blows. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to stay excited on that creative end of comics in the industry. It's easy to stay excited for comics when I read comics, and it's hard for me to stay excited sometimes when I take my blows in the industry. I always say I love the craft of comics, and I don't like the industry. So.
We definitely have these conversations a lot. I think back to like finding artists, listen, we're hiring a lot of artists here and there for these books and other things at VeeFriends. And one of the things that I try to tell people is, the first thing people do is they go look at your social media. Like if I see that you're kind of in some sort of turmoil or, and I learned this lesson when I was young and fiery. You guys remember, and like I probably shot myself in the foot for jobs. I know this for a fact because I've spoken to some of those editors because I was very vocal. And I'm not saying don't be your own person and have your own thoughts and beliefs. I'm like, but if you're a professional and this is what you want to do and you wake up and you're a professional writer or creator, then you just have to get to work and, kind of like shut up and draw, like get the work done and, keep your opinion.
I'm agreeing here with you, not in terms of that you shot yourself in the foot. I'm agreeing with you here in terms of, I remember when I shot myself in the foot and I had to learn that that's part of the business and I had to learn to shut my mouth sometimes. And, not even, or at least not publicly, be, but yeah.
It still echoes. There's a big book that I was almost going to work on for someone, and it's an editor that we both all know. And I was at dinner with him, and I was like, "I'll do anything. I would draw this for free." And he said, "DJ, you're dangerous because you're honest." And I was like, "Oh, it just made me feel like the whole thing just sucked." Like what? Why wouldn't you want to work with honest people? But it's like, well, because if the pay doesn't come through, you might say something like. But we see that happening now, like. And this isn't to like get into a negative rant about comic books, but I just saw Greg Capullo lit up Marvel for not paying somebody. I mean, artists need to be paid, you know what I mean? Like, and on time, and there's no excuse for a publisher like Marvel not to pay for something. But
the most bizarre thing about my career is I've never gotten mad for taking a shitty deal. I've only ever gotten mad for taking a shitty deal and then them not honoring that shitty deal.
Right. Yeah.
Like you can't even honor this bad deal you gave me that I'm like cool with. Like that's how bad comics can be. And that's how I always tell people say, "Oh, what's the most valuable trait in comics?" I'm like, perseverance. Perseverance is the most valuable trait in this business.
That's true. Yeah. I've heard two things, similar things, different times. Last year at New York Comic Con, I heard this. We talk about it internally sometimes. But and then a guy the other day, I was talking to another publisher, and he said, artists are the worst. And he's talking to an artist, and I'm like, I get it. He's like, because they disappear, they vanish. Like they say they're going to do something, they don't read their contracts, and they like think. But I'm like, from the artist's perspective, I'm like, man, this is hard. It's not easy to do this, and a lot of writers and creators are bouncing around in our own heads sometimes, like redrawing a page over and over again when no one sees it and it's totally fine. So I think having a little empathy and like, not to tout VeeFriends, but like definitely being around these characters and being like, how can I be more empathetic for something that someone might be going through? I don't know what they're doing in their life. And actually reaching out and being more human and not just like, you're a warm body that knows how to create these things or write these things. So get to it right now because I got to go make some money. I think artists and creators are sensitive in the best way, I think. So, but there's a balance there that you have to be, if you want to do this for a living, it's hard work and you definitely have to love it and be obsessed with it. I think everybody here is. So
perseverance is a good word for it because it also takes a long time to make a comic. And during that time, you go through those emotional ups and downs. You sort of have to have faith in, what you're doing is worth the time you're putting into it, that you will get it to the finish line, that the deal that you made is going to stay true throughout that process. It is a strange, experience because so many people, I think, may love comics, but if you haven't made them, it's a really different experience on the other side of the table, so to speak. Than it is the reading, the fandom, the collecting, the fun part. But it's a totally different experience. And I know a lot of people, even from my fan days, we were all fans. Nobody makes comics that doesn't start out as a comics fan. This is not an industry you back into because it's like, hey, my skill set, I can make a killing here. You do it as fandom. And I have known super talented people who they can't quite make that transition from fan to professional, because the professional, they had something pictured in their head, probably from a wizard shoot that we read when we were kids. And the reality is much, much different. And I see people that they sort of struggle to kind of like, hey, I dreamed of doing this, but now I kind of have to adjust to the reality of doing this. And not everybody makes that adjustment.
It's a job. It's and if you don't treat it like a job, you don't even have a chance at being successful in it. So that's the second piece. I one of the pieces of advice I give people is perseverance. And the second piece of advice at the top when I do consulting is I tell people it's a job. And if you think that you are just going to lay around in bed all day, write when you want or draw when you want, and then just kind of do whatever. I mean, yeah, maybe you can get away with that to a certain point. But I mean, if you're disciplined enough to be undisciplined in some way, meaning if you can stay within some kind of rails, but the people who really make it are disciplined, and they treat it like a job, and that's what you have to do. It's a dream, but it's not. It's a dream to work in comics, and get working comics, and But if you treat it like a dream, you're gonna get. It's just gonna pass you by because you're not gonna get hired, or So
yeah.
James, you mentioned a couple of times, that you're a working writer. Do you write outside of comics? Do you do other kinds of writing?
Yeah, I do. I do a lot of screenplays. I don't want to sound spec, but I've done some work outside of comics, and I've always, I wrote a manuscript once, and it got a lot of praise, and then I had to go back and, I had to rewrite it or whatever. Got praised by the people like agents and stuff, and I never, then I got more comic work, and I guess I've always just kind of defaulted to comics because it's it's what I'm doing. But I'm trying to make an effort to do more screenplays and stuff like that, and get those into the hands of my agent. So I do, but not professionally. Having said that, I do consultation work. I do all types of things related to that, writing and stuff. I'm editor-in-chief of 21 Pulp. So I have those duties, project manager duties. So in terms of that, but in terms of outside, writing outside of comics, I've never pursued it to the point where, I've gotten my foot in the door enough. And that's my own fault. It really wasn't a matter of rejection or failure. It's just that I just went back to a comic project and I just left it over there because, sometimes I work 60, 80 hours a week on stuff. Like right now, I'm just super busy and trees are falling on my house. So things happen, and you kind of have to just do what's in front of you. It's hard to go outside of it, and take that chance and to make that space for something that maybe isn't going to pan out, rather than the thing that you're doing that is going to be published or is going to be read.
Yeah, whenever, going back to perseverance, I feel like another thing that happens, it's funny, if we were to go over our 30 years, and talk about various creators that we were like, man, remember this guy. I think that as a writer, your skill set's valuable in a lot of different areas. The ability to take a bunch of ideas and organize them in a way that another human can read that, see that, and make sense of it is a really valuable skill. And I see so many talented people in comics end up getting basically pulled into these other fields because, as you mentioned earlier, this industry has a lot of bad actors in it. And it does take a long time to make a comic. So sometimes you see these talented creators go in different directions because opportunities come up. Who knows? Responsibilities may dictate some change, but it's always kind of I always say just be grateful for the good comic you get out of anyone, because there's no guarantee that people are going to be here for 30 years, doing this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And couldn't agree with you more.
This has been a great. Thanks for joining us today. Do you have anything that you want to plug that's happening right now with your world?
Let's see. The only thing I would say is, like, right now, Omega book is coming out. Like I did it at the beginning of people seem to be really digging this book. It's by Mad Cave. So if I support that book, and then
James, give us the pitch on that. What is
Oh,
that book
I'm sorry.
about?
Basically, a man who's estranged with his father, who happens to be a priest. He hates his father, who was a scientist. He's a priest, and he inherits some of his father's stuff, and included with that stuff is something that leads to what's called the Omega Book, and the Omega Book basically has all the secrets of the universe in it. So a priest finds himself with the secrets of the universe, and then of course all these forces are trying to get their hands on it. So he has to come to terms with his kind of relationship with his dead father, and he has to um, keep these secrets safe and kind of evade all the people that are coming for him. So, yeah, that's the Omega Book, and it's the most immediate thing that's coming out right now, I would say. And if you see, maybe go on Amazon or go on Books and Noble or Barnes and Noble, sorry, and pick up The World Enders, about some lunatics going to destroy the world. But I also have books coming out through 21 Pulp. Kai Jr. It's about a little giant monster who wants to be king of the monsters someday, and he's a little too obsessed with it, and so he has to learn to pull back a little, enjoy life a little more. And Monsters of Jimmy Crumb comes out, I think, in October, and that is through Macmillan, and that can be purchased on through Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all that stuff.
That's really
and
good.
I think those are pretty much the ones I would say. Yeah, if you want to support me, go out and grab those books. Oh, and VeeFriends, obviously. Go out and get your VeeFriends comics.
And he's working on a new VeeFriends script now, and
I feel like I cracked it last night, and I found that one thing in it that I was like, yeah, this pushes it a little further, and this gets it. I felt like I cracked it.
I'm excited for that one too, because it's not as weird as Shell's Kitchen. It's not as strange, but
my first draft was weird.
Okay.
I pulled it back a little, and I was like, I don't think this is what I don't think this falls into what it needs to be. And but anyway.
Yeah.
James, are you active on social media anywhere that people should follow you or can follow you?
I'm just on Facebook. I'm terrible at social media. It's one of my negatives, and I've been criticized for it a lot. I'm hard to find. I'm on Facebook, and just look for James Patrick, comic writer or whatever, and I'll friend you. And I've been meaning to. I used to have X, and God, it was a cesspool to me. And I ended up dropping it because it depressed me and made the world seem like a terrible place. And but I got to get back on Instagram and stuff. So you can follow me on Facebook, and I'm building a website right now. So
it's great. You should be my tip to when I hear that from creators is like, write your own persona on there and just be like, not be someone else, but just be like, just write your posts, like schedule them out and just don't look at it. So that's probably the best thing to do. So
that's pretty good advice for social media, I think, DJ.
Well, James will be back probably early next year for another round of looking at a new book, and I hope you follow all the stuff that he's talking about. And man, it's just so good to have you. And
so before we go, thank you so much for asking me to do this. Obviously, I've been working with you forever. Jim, I have been a fan forever, and it is an honor to work in this space with you as well. So I just wanted to, say that.
Well, thanks, James. I had a great time today. Thank you for coming on here.
Oh, I forgot one last thing. You probably, if people are following VeeFriends, the next book is Moral Monkey, which comes out next week, I believe. Yeah, it'll be on sale next week. So people have not seen the back cover yet. It's my homage to. I hope Frank doesn't get upset about. I don't think he will. There's so many homages to. But
he'd be mad at a lot of people if he got mad at everybody that homaged this cover.
He likes me, so that's good. But yeah, the Moral Monkey story, which is pretty wild, and art from another old friend, Steve Musgrave. So I can't wait for you guys to see that. We'll have Steve on next week. Actually, Steve's going to come on, and we'll talk about Moral Monkey next week. Should I rip it, DJ? Listen, everyone asks me, should I rip these comics? Yes, you should rip them all open. They're in a bag to be opened. Open them up, and then you know what else to do? Read them. Read the stories. Don't just slab them or resell them. If I meet you in person and you can't tell me the names of these characters, I will hang my head and be sad. So I won't be disappointed in you, but I want you to read the comics, read more comics. So that's that. All right, guys, we'll see you soon, and